Thor here, and today I would like to do a brief explanation and address some of the rumors of Glen Canyon Dam and an update on what I have learned and some of my own personal projections about the future of Glen Canyon Dam. Understand that some may consider some of the things I am going to talk about as controversial, and I in no way intend to offend anybody. I should also note that there's a dizzying array of information out there about what is happening with Lake Powell and the dam. And I am a human, and like all humans I make errors, so it is very possible that some of my information may not be spot on or accurate or even completely wrong. But given that I live on Lake Powell, it is likely that I have learned some level of relevant information of which I'm about to share with you. Again, please forgive me if I make some mistakes. I cannot urge that enough. To start out with, I want to address the elephant in the room. There have been a lot of rumors and headlines about Lake Powell being drained. This is simply not true, and I'll get into that in a moment. Next, I would like to address the rumors of Glen Canyon Dam being removed or decommissioned. This is definitely not true, and as far as I can tell, there are no plans to remove Glen Canyon Dam by any means or any way. In truth, Glen Canyon Dam is more relevant now than it has ever been before, considering that it is speculated many states in America will be suffering power shortages within the next 10 years, especially as more people buy and utilize electric vehicles for transportation. Now that we've addressed some of the big elephants in the room, I will get into some of the more specifics. So moving forward, I would like to explain the main function of Glen Canyon Dam as well as its secondary purpose, so this way you can have a relative context to understand why Lake Powell will not be drained and why the dam will not be decommissioned. Glen Canyon Dam was made primarily to control the Colorado River and provide a steady flow of water to the lower subsidiaries. To this effect, it has worked almost flawlessly, except for one instance, one very noticeable instance. However, Glen Canyon Dam has a secondary purpose. While it's not its primary purpose, it's still a very valid and important purpose. It creates power. It is also important to note that the primary reason Lake Powell is so low is because of two reasons. Number one is drought. Lake Powell in the upper Colorado River Basin, which is what feeds Lake Powell, has undergone a sustained drought for about 16 years now. This is the driest the Colorado Basin has been in over 100 years. Next is some water mismanagement, but that is a subject I will discuss towards the end of this video. One of the main rumors I hear is that it is suggested to drain Lake Powell to help refill the Hoover Dam's reservoir, also known as Lake Mead, and to enable Hoover Dam to run at full capacity for a short time. For reference, Hoover Dam is located on the same river below Glen Canyon Dam. This idea at first might make some sense, but when you give it some thought, doing so would be kind of wasteful. Bypassing Glen Canyon Dam into Hoover Dam would mean all that power that could have been generated by Glen Canyon Dam was simply wasted. Hoover Dam recycles all the water that Glen Canyon Dam sends to it, meaning that the same gallon of water used to create power in Glen Canyon Dam is used again to make more power in Hoover Dam. So from an electrical generation standpoint, we would lose half of all the potential electricity that could be made if we simply sent the water downstream. Some have suggested draining Lake Powell because of the evaporation issues. For reference, I have heard some interesting takes on exactly how much water is lost from evaporation and seepage in Lake Powell, and while I'm sure there are relative numbers on the subject, sadly I could not find any information that wasn't in some way contradicted by other information. Sadly, that is the reality of science, as keeping track of all the water in Lake Powell is nearly impossible. So without giving exact numbers, what I can say that we know is that water is evaporating and seeping out of Lake Powell. However, its inefficiencies would not justify its draining, especially given the time of year, as at this point in time Lake Powell will not evaporate as much water as it did before due to the weather cooling down. In addition to that, the water in Lake Powell has receded well over 150 feet from full pool. This is important to understand because the water line has also physically shrunk, and now much of the water in Lake Powell is residing in deep canyons, which also reduces evaporation and seepage. Another rumor about the reason Lake Powell is being drained is because of the ongoing silt issue. Some speculate that the silt generated by the Colorado River and several other smaller rivers is filling up Lake Powell, and that the dam will be clogged with silt. This is definitely an issue that will affect Glen Canyon Dam at some point, but not for a couple of decades at least. So as of the moment, it wouldn't make any sense to decommission a dam for a problem that isn't a problem. In addition to that, there are solutions for silt in front of dams, and it would be much more likely that the solutions of basically dredging or scooping out the silt would be implemented instead of decommissioning the dam. Another, and quite possibly one of the biggest reasons Glen Canyon Dam will not be decommissioned is because of its primary purpose, to control the Colorado River. Glen Canyon Dam has demonstrated its ability to store water for a substantial amount of time during droughts. If it were not for Glen Canyon Dam and its massive reservoir, Lake Powell, it is likely that Hoover Dam's reservoir, otherwise known as Lake Mead, would not have been able to provide water during this 16-year drought, and Hoover Dam would have had to shut down by now. Another reason that it is likely Lake Powell will not be drained is because of the outlying communities that rely on Lake Powell. Page, Arizona, Bigwater, and many more primarily make their income off of tourism generated by vacationers seeking recreation on Lake Powell. Draining Lake Powell would bring about an end to that, and in turn sentence the people who live here to destitution. To be clear, this also includes many of the natives who live on the reservation and in the cities, so not only would it be detrimental for everyone, but also culturally destructive to drain Lake Powell, as many natives would have to leave their families and seek employment elsewhere. Normally I would not include these kind of things, but it is important to understand that Lake Powell is partially located on the Navajo reservation, and they have a valid right to not be excluded and to be acknowledged for the repercussions of draining Lake Powell. Now that I have dispelled some of the rumors of why Lake Powell will not be drained and Glen Canyon Dam will not be removed, I would like to address some of the more recent things that have happened to maybe show that we are coming to the end of this 16-year drought, and that there is a possibility Lake Powell may start filling back up again. First off, I need to make it clear I'm not a meteorologist, or do I know much about the weather other than looking up at the sky. I'm also no expert on the upper Colorado Basin, or for that matter an expert in really, well, much of anything. I would not dare say with any level of certainty what will happen in the future, so take any of my opinions with a grain of salt. So far this year at Lake Powell, the monsoons, which is a period of time in which there is a lot of rain, have returned. Unfortunately, they did not come back at full strength, but from my understanding they have been absent for several years. This is a very good sign, and they do help supply some of the water that goes to the Colorado River as well as Lake Powell. The upper Colorado Basin has already experienced a lot of rain and snow, and if my understanding is correct, the groundwater has already fully saturated. This is very good news, as this is extremely early in the year for it to be this way. It is currently estimated by the Bureau of Reclamation that the upper basin could experience a minimum of 47% of its average inflow. Don't get discouraged yet. The Bureau of Reclamation is also projecting a maximum of 162% of the average inflow of water. Given the recent weather, it's looking more and more likely that we could expect the latter. Only time will tell. There is one obstacle to keep in mind though. Because of how low Lake Powell became, several reservoirs upstream were released to fill Lake Powell, and they will need to be replenished before Lake Powell. Another thing to understand is next year California and some of the lower subsidiaries are going to implement extreme drought measures, or to be more precise, 2022, which will enable both Glen Canyon Dam and Hoover Dam to further reduce output and hopefully either maintain the reservoirs at current levels or possibly allow them to replenish their reservoirs. So all in all, this is good news for Lake Powell and good news for Lake Mead. Now that I have addressed the drought, I would like to address some of the mismanagement of Lake Powell, the Colorado River, and its water. Again, I'm no expert in this, and many of the things I have learned may not be entirely correct, so I apologize if they are not. So please keep that in mind, even more so as I continue. Lake Powell's water inflow was calculated during a period of abundance and was not a true representation of the Colorado River's average output levels when the water rights were assigned. If my understanding is correct, the survey was done while the Colorado River was outputting 140%, which is 40% more water than its average. I couldn't find anything to suggest that this was corrected, but if it was, please let me know in the comments section. A large majority of the water from Lake Powell is used for farming in California. Because of this, California was supposed to build smaller reservoirs along the water canals to save water for times of drought. Sadly, these reservoirs were defunded when the California government decided to spend their money on other things like the failed $100 billion high-speed railway, as well as many other things. In addition to that, water rights for farmers in California can be reduced if a farmer failed to use their water allotment. This was a problem for farmers when they would need to leave a field barren, leading to many farmers watering empty fields to retain their water rights for when they would need to replant their fields the next year. In addition to that, many Californians have noticed a need for additional water. A Mississippi pipeline was proposed but was never built. Programs for individuals to get rebates for installing water reclamation systems in their homes never took flight, and for a long time California rejected the idea of building large-scale oceanic desalination plants up until very recently. Instead, California has opted to rely on the Colorado River for a large amount of its water, roughly a third of all of its water. California utilizes the highest amount of water from the Colorado River, 27% of it to be precise. Another water issue that caused Lake Powell to be drained was the constant need to flood the lower subsidiary for what we locally call the chub fish, or more properly known as the humpback chubfish. This fish is unique to the Colorado River and up until recently was classified as endangered and is now classified as threatened. To help the fish survive, periodic water dumps had to be done to ensure the fish had adequate spawning grounds, which would cause Lake Powell to noticeably drop. Currently, it's estimated that there is a population of more than 12,000, which is progress from their previous lower population numbers. Environmentalists are not happy about the reclassification from endangered to threatened, as now the periodic water dumps that help the humpback chubfish spawn will no longer happen as often. This is good news for Lake Powell, but bad news for the humpback chubfish. Only time will tell if the humpback chubfish will be able to continue to thrive, but on this subject I choose to be optimistic, as the main reason the chubfish was going extinct was because of introduced non-native predator fish, whose populations have been reduced. Again, I apologize if some of my information was not entirely accurate. Sourcing all of this was a bit of a nightmare. Overall, I'm hopeful for Lake Powell's water levels to rise next year, and hopefully all of this drought will bring about some reform to how we use the Colorado River in the future. If you like this kind of content and would like to help support me so I can make videos like this more often, or maybe even one day full time, feel free to like and subscribe. It will help me a lot. And feel free to check out some of my other videos on Lake Powell. The scenic videos are quite relaxing and beautiful. So without taking any more of your time, this is Thor, signing out.